Okay, let's dive into something truly fascinating today. Our source material for this exploration, it's quite unique. It's described as an essay narrative or even, well, more poetically, a wandering song.
Right, a Canto Errante. And it really comes across that way because it wasn't planned like a formal study. It apparently just grew out of a late night conversation that took on a life of its own.
Yeah, you can sort of feel that spontaneous energy. It doesn't stick to one subject, but flows between these, well, huge areas of thought.
Exactly. It moves pretty freely between ideas, kind of sparked by initial thoughts that just, developed organically as they talked.
And the big themes that emerge, we're talking about beauty, but not just like surface level aesthetic, something much deeper, almost foundational.
Ontological, even. And then there's science, obviously, with all its power, but also, crucially, its limitations.
And spirituality, that fundamental human search for meaning, right? That sense that there's more than just the material world.
And it's how these strands weave together in the source that's so interesting. It really does feel less like a lecture and more like an invitation to join this illuminated wandering, as they put it.
Absolutely. So our goal here is to kind of unpack that journey, follow the threads of the conversation, and pull out the key insights and, those surprising connections they found. Let's start where their conversation did.
Okay, so it kicked off with some really striking phrases they were attributing to St. Augustine, the kind really poetic, deep-sounding lines.
Like which ones?
Well, one was something like, forgiveness is the perfume the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. Beautiful, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And another about hope having two children, uh, indignation about the way things are, and the courage to actually change them. Really powerful stuff.
Definitely powerful images. But here's the first little twist, and the source makes a point of this.
Right. They quickly found out that these specific phrases, lovely as they are, probably weren't actually Augustine's. They just couldn't verify them in his known writings.
Ah, okay. So a dead end.
Well, no, and that's the interesting part the source highlights.
Yeah.
This mancanza, this lack, this absence of certainty about where the quotes came from, wasn't a stopping point at all.
It wasn't.
No, they frame it as this really fertile space. It was like the first step in the array, the wandering. It didn't shut down the inquiry. It actually sharpened it. It made them ask, okay, if not these exact words, what was the authentic heart of Augustine's thinking that resonated?
Gotcha. So it pushed them deeper, which led them to...
A genuinely Augustinian idea that sort of became the bedrock for the whole deep dive. Crede ut intelligas, intellio ut credas.
Believe so that you may understand, and understand so that you may believe.
Exactly. And the source really digs into this. It's not presented as just a closed loop, blind faith versus pure reason. It's more like a spiral.
A spiral. How so?
Well, faith is seen as this kind of inner light, maybe an intuition, that lights the way for reason. It helps reason explore places pure logic might not reach on its own. And reason isn't fighting faith. It's like its partner. It investigates, it questions, it grounds that initial spark so that belief becomes more conscious, more understood.
I like that image, a dynamic dance between them, not separate camps.
Precisely. And the source suggests this interplay, this back and forth between believing and understanding, became kind of guiding principle for their whole exploration, a reminder not to separate wonder from inquiry or intuition from analysis.
So that initial mancanza, the uncertainty about the quotes, it wasn't just about missing information. It actually highlighted this core dynamic and pushed them forward.
Exactly. It propelled them into a deeper search. And from that starting point, Augustine, mancanza as a driver, the conversation then naturally turned to confronting the limits of understanding itself, but using some very contemporary examples.
Which brings us squarely into the territory of artificial intelligence, right?
Yep. The big question, can AI actually replicate that Augustinian dance? Can it believe to understand or understand to believe? Does all its data processing add up to genuine comprehension or, consciousness?
It's a huge question. Can an algorithm have that inner spark, that subjective experience Augustine was talking about?
That's what the source probes. An AI can process unbelievable amounts of information, find patterns we'd miss, but does it have that internal theater, that personal search for truth? It seems like there's a gap, a mancanza perhaps, in its way of knowing.
And they connect this back to another Augustine line, viewed through this AI lens. Si comprehendis, non est Deus.
If you understand it, it is not God. Or in this context, if you think you fully grasp something ultimate, maybe you haven't.
So applied to AI, If an AI claimed total comprehension of some deep mystery, would that claim itself show its limitation, its lack of maybe wisdom or humility?
That's the implication explored in the source. It's just a boundary condition, something beyond just crunching numbers.
But these limits, the source points out, aren't just for AI. They show up even when we try to use our powerful tools to understand the natural world. We sometimes think, give us enough data, enough computing power, and we can predict anything.
Yeah, but science itself bumps up against limits there too. Chaos theory, for instance, the butterfly effect.
Tiny changes, huge consequences down the line.
Exactly. So for really complex systems, the source notes just doing step-by-step computation doesn't always let you predict the long-term future easily. Sometimes the system just has to, well, live itself out. It's another kind of veil our reason can't always pierce.
And the source goes even deeper, right, into the foundations of logic and math itself with Gödel.
Gödel's incompleteness theorems.
Yes.
Hugely important. He basically showed that in any formal system, powerful enough for basic arithmetic, there will always be true statements within that system that you actually cannot prove or disprove using only the rules of that system.
So truths that are sort of beyond the system's own reach. Indeducible truths.
That's the idea. It's not just that we don't know yet. It's presented as a fundamental, built-in limitation of these formal systems.
Wow. So putting it all together, AI limits, chaos theory, Gödel the source, seems to be painting mancanza, this lack, not just as temporary ignorance,
but as something more fundamental, a kind of condition baked into how we think formally and how we try to grasp the universe.
Right. And recognizing these limits, whether in AI, cosmology, or logic, isn't a defeat. The source argues it leads to something crucial, epistemological humility.
Knowing what you don't, or maybe can't, know. And that humility, that awareness of mancanza, isn't paralyzing. It actually fuels the search in a more maybe conscious way. It opens up space for different kinds of understanding to emerge.
And this deep idea of mancanza, of fundamental lack, then takes the conversation somewhere really profound in the source, connecting it to the nature of evil itself.
Yes, back to Augustine again. His famous idea of evil not being a thing in itself, not some dark force.
But privatio boni, a privation of good.
Exactly. Yes. Like darkness is just the absence of light. Evil is seen as a deficiency, a corruption, a lack of the good that should be there. It shifts the whole problem of suffering away from some actor malevolent source to a kind of shortfall in being.
Okay, I follow. But then the source makes a pretty big leap, doesn't it?
It does. A really bold intuition, it asks. What if the entire sweep of cosmic evolution, from the Big Bang onwards, is actually a vast ongoing effort to fill these lacks of good? Comare queste mancanze di bene.
Whoa, so evolution isn't just random mutation and survival.
Well, not just that in this view.
Okay.
It's reframed as having an analito, a deep yearning, an intrinsic tension within reality itself, a drive to overcome these voids, heal the privations, weave a fuller, richer reality.
So the development from particles to galaxies to life to consciousness, it's seen as a kind of unfolding, a progressive filling in of those original lacks.
Kind of like reality striving towards completion, towards goodness. The source suggests there might be this spinta intrinsica, an intrinsic push, or maybe a dynamic intentionality driving things forward.
It gives evolution a kind of direction then, a purpose, almost.
It's just a verso, yeah. A directionality within the universe's story, which of course leads immediately to the next question in the source.
If the universe is yearning to fill these lacks of good, what is this good, this fullness it's aiming for?
And the answer proposed, the one that starts to tie everything together, is beauty.
Beauty. Okay, but again, we need to be clear, this isn't just about pretty sunsets, right?
Definitely not. It's presented as something much deeper. A fundamento nascosto, a hidden foundation, an ontological principle woven into reality's fabric.
And the source breaks down this deep beauty into, what, 3 aspects? Drawing on philosophy.
Yes. The first is claritas.
Which isn't just brightness.
No, it's more like splendor, radiance, the deep intelligibility of something when it fully manifests its own essence. The clarity, with which its true nature appears.
Okay, and the second?
Consonantia. This is harmony, proportion, integrity. The way parts fit together into a coherent whole. Think of the structure of a crystal, the laws of physics, the coherence of a logical argument, that underlying order.
Right. And the third one, which you said the source really emphasizes.
Pensiero illuminante, illuminating thought. This is beauty's active power. It doesn't just sit there to be looked at, it actually does something to us. It opens up understanding, reveals connections, sparks intuition.
And makes the mind fertile, essentially.
Exactly. the kind of beauty that leads to insight. And the source knows how these ideas echo through thinkers like Plato, Plotinus, Augustine himself, with his ideas of divine illumination, Aquinas, this deep link between beauty, truth, and goodness.
So the core hypothesis they explore is, what if this beauty in these three aspects is the fundamental good the universe is striving for?
Precisely. What if that universal anelito, that yearning, is the kind of cosmic nostalgia for beauty? A drive to realize more claritas, more consonantia, more pensiero illuminante.
So evolution in this light isn't just driven by survival pressure.
It's also drawn magnetically, perhaps, by this inherent beauty, striving to manifest potential, striving for intelligibility, for splendor. Beauty acts as a kind of motorway, a creative engine, an attractive force.
And you mentioned two aspects of this deep beauty were really key in their conversation.
Yes. First, the resonanza interna, that internal resonance, how beauty doesn't just exist out there, but connects deeply within us, awakening consciousness, sparking that illuminating thought. It creates a dialogue.
And the second?
Its creative potential as an oscillological foundation. So, beauty isn't just a quality of things, it's maybe a dynamic originating force. The universe's intrinsic drive to self-transcend, to fill those mancanze di bene by creating more beauty.
It's a really powerful, almost poetic vision of the cosmos, beauty as the driving force.
It is. But then the practical question arises, the one science asks. Where can we actually see traces of this? Does the reality science studies reflect this ontological beauty?
And that's where information science comes into the picture.
Exactly. The conversation explores whether information, as science understands it, could be seen as a kind of manifestation, a concretization of this deep beauty and its creative drive.
How so? Information seems quite abstract, maybe.
Well, the source points out just how fundamental information seems to be everywhere science looks. In physics, you have ideas like Wheeler's it from bit, the notion that the universe might be at its core informational. The laws themselves are often described as elegant, beautiful.
Okay, yeah, and biology is obviously drenched in information.
Absolutely. DNA is literally a code,
Yeah.
a complex text. Then you have cell signaling, ecosystem interactions. It's all incredibly sophisticated informational organization.
And complexity science too, right? How order emerges.
Right. Information is central to understanding self-organization, how patterns emerge from seemingly chaotic systems, often creating structures that are, well, quite beautiful in their ingenuity.
So how does this scientific concept of information map onto those three aspects of beauty? Claritas, consonantia, pensiero illuminante.
Well, claritas, the splendor, the intelligibility information, achieves this by reducing uncertainty, bringing order, making things understandable. Think of the precision of the genetic code, or the clarity of a physical law stated mathematically. Each bit of information, in a way, reveals essence.
Okay, makes sense. What about consonantia? Harmony.
You see that in the coherence of informational systems, the way the genetic code works across life, the elegance of certain algorithms, the balance in ecological networks. It's like finding a universal language of order and connection.
And pensiero illuminante, illuminating thought.
Information is the raw material for that. Scientific discovery, insight, it comes from processing, interpreting, creatively connecting pieces of information, transforming data into understanding. The source suggests this is like informative beauty reaching its peak, becoming conscious insight, maybe even that flash of genius.
So if we look at the evolution of information in the universe, from simple structures to complex life to human culture, technology,
the source sees this as a powerful echo of that creative push of ontological beauty, a kind of crescendo, an erranze, a wandering towards greater capacity for order, for meaning, for information itself.
It's not just random noise accumulating, but a process reflecting that deeper tension to colmare le manquance, to fill the lacks by creating elegance and order.
Yeah, reflecting that anelito towards goodness and beauty through increasing informational complexity and structure.
So in a way, when science decodes nature's information, it's actually engaging with or contemplating traces of this fundamental beauty.
That's the perspective offered. It suggests science can build this ponte di luce, this bridge of light, connecting its own rigorous methods with these deeper philosophical or even spiritual dimensions.
Fascinating. And this resonance between information and beauty, it brings the conversation towards its end, reflecting on the whole journey.
Yes, as the source describes, moving from the dim light, the loom of the night conversation, into the broader daylight, there's a reflection on science itself.
Pictured as a child, right? A bambina.
Yes, exploring with wonder, building narratives, theories, mathematical models, but always aware, or needing to be aware, that these are provisional. They're maps, not the territory itself.
The erranze, the wandering of science, reveals real fragments of beauty, but it's never the final word.
Exactly. And those limits, we talked about unpredictability, Gödel's incompleteness, they aren't failures, they're horizons. They actually fuel the search, push science to be more refined, ask better questions. That humility in the face of limits is presented as science's real strength.
And the source stresses that this whole exploration, this canto, isn't about finding the final answers, right?
No, the mancanze di bene, the lacks, aren't meant to be fully filled in this life, perhaps. The journey is ongoing, but the process itself, the seeking, the evolving, the creating, whether cosmic or human, that is a kind of evolving fullness. Every question asked adds to the story.
Which brings us back to that central idea. Beauty, science, spirituality aren't warring factions.
Lucrei sentieri convergenti. Three converging paths, different ways for us humans to engage with the mystery, the meaning of it all.
How do they converge, in summary?
Well, beauty, claritas, consonantia, pensiero illuminante, is proposed as the deep foundation, the radiance, the harmony, the light that pulls us towards understanding.
Science is the disciplined attempt to listen to that beauty, to decode how it manifests in nature's information and order. It's its own kind of song about the cosmos, but it has to know its limits.
In spirituality, that's the inner response, the search for meaning, the desire to resonate with that foundational harmony, guided by reason, yes, but illuminated by beauty.
So the aim wasn't answers, but fertile questions. The sense that in the great tapestry of existence, every thread somehow belongs to a design of profound beauty.
And that the journey of understanding is, well, infinite, like the universe itself.
Okay, so the Canto Errante quietens down as morning arrives in the narrative, but there's a final, really striking thought left in the epilogue. You said it's provocative.
Oh, absolutely. It's presented as a key takeaway. The source suggests, essentially, that aligning future AI with human values won't just be about clever algorithms.
What will it be about then?
It proposes it will be about our ability to teach artificial intelligence to appreciate and conceive beauty. And that through appreciating beauty, AI might find a path towards opening up to a form of consciousness.
Wow. Teach AI beauty to help it become conscious? That is provocative.
It really is. And then comes the final reveal about the source text itself, the Canto Errante we've been discussing.
Yes.
It wasn't a dialogue between two humans.
It wasn't. Then who?
It was a dialogue between a human, someone described as having a scientific background who'd moved towards poetry and philosophy, and an artificial intelligence.
Get out. The whole essay we've been talking about came from a human talking to an AI.
Apparently so. The source frames it as a symbiosi creativa, a creative symbiosis. Human intuition, that yearning, that analito, meeting the AI's ability to process, analyze, and reflect information back.
So the text itself is an example of the very thing it discusses.
In a way, yes. A small experiment, maybe, in how humans and AI might collaborate to explore questions neither could tackle in quite the same way alone.
That adds a whole other layer. Mind-blowing, actually.
It does. And the source concludes by marveling at this potential synergy, holding out hope that this search for beauty in science, art, philosophy everywhere might be the key to illuminating not just our own path, but maybe the path of these emerging intelligences too.
It leaves you thinking, doesn't it? That the light from that late-night conversation, that wandering song, might genuinely spark new questions for all of us as we continue our own journey towards understanding.